morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Thank you for joining. At CIQ, we're focused on powering the next generation of software infrastructure, leveraging the capabilities of cloud, hyperscale, and HPC. From research to the enterprise, our customers rely on us for the ultimate Rocky Linux, Werewolf, and Apptainer support escalation. We provide deep development capabilities and solutions, all delivered in the collaborative spirit of open source.
Good morning, Rose.
Yes.
Where are we now?
What is
lost in
going
the day
on,
already.
man? It is so nice to see you again.
Happy 24.
It is. It is officially 2024. And so that is very exciting. I hope that you had a nice one, nice little holiday, a little bit of
I
time
feel like it
off.
was too short. I don't feel like there was nearly enough time.
Yeah. I went on a little vacation, and it's funny because when I got back, it was like, "How you doing?" It's like, "Oh, I'm exhausted. I need a vacation now that I went on vacation." You're like,
A
time
good
to
vacation.
recover.
When you come home too exhausted from vacation that you need a vacation, that's a good vacation.
That is absolutely true. So, yes, hello, everybody. Welcome. I hope that you had a wonderful holiday season and a good new year as well. Thanks for being here. So, today we're going to be talking about mastering Rocky 8 to 9 migration and AAP to AWX integration. Now, if you know what we're talking about, awesome. We're going to cruise right into it. And if not, don't worry. We will expand on those acronyms and give you all the details that you need. So I think that we're going to invite one of our very special guests, Mr. Greg Soul, to party on. All right. Yeah. Mr. Stash.
Happy New Year, Greg.
What's up?
Hey, gang. What's good?
It's all good, man. It's all good.
2024, and we're at January 4th already. I thought 23 went fast. This is starting to kind of take the same path. It's going to go very fast.
We're zooming.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
I like moving fast. So what we do, right? Move fast, break things.
Yeah.
That's what we do here. That's what we like outside of here. But yes, that's what we do here. We definitely move fast. Absolutely.
I was thinking about that the other day, actually, like how cool it is to have a job where like your job is literally to break stuff. Like how traumatizing that must be as a child, like growing up, that person that just like to take things apart and everything that they touch broke, and how that is so necessary now in a lot of our jobs. Like we need those people to just get in there and tinker and do stuff so that we can continue to iterate on it. And yeah, Dave Rush nailed it. Woo!
Yeah, I would love to take a poll. And I know where Dave would stand on this one of who were those kids that actually tore stuff apart? Because I'm pretty sure it's most of us. I sure did too.
Yeah. That's exactly. My brother was like that. And I thought he was insane, right? I was like, why? Why do you have to take everything apart? Like, this is, this like.
You got to know.
Yeah, exactly. He wanted to know how it worked. And then it was like a little bit challenging to put it back together. He was like, whatever, I'll let somebody else do that. Just buy a new one.
You might have some extra parts. It's okay. They weren't necessary.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Beauty of open source. You get to go tear it apart.
Yeah.
But somebody actually will put it back together. So that's the good thing. Where it's already together.
Yes. And it's a valued skill. Appliances, TVs, toys. Yeah. The phone. I was like, dude, come on. Why do you have to take the phone apart? It was like back in like, the days when you actually had a phone you could pick up. Yes. Good time.
I did that too. I think what you describe really is my entire IT career is just things break and then I try it and it's still broken. I try it, it's still broken. And eventually it starts working and then I move on to the next thing and it's broken and broken and then eventually it works. It's kind of trial and error. I guess is probably a good descriptor of it. And if because I know anytime I did anything and it worked on the first try, I was worried because it's like that means I missed something. Something's broken. I just haven't figured out what it is yet. So let me try and suss that out.
How do you were breaking something that wasn't quite complicated enough? It was too easy. It just was too easy.
Well, it's like I used to have a saying, no change window goes unpunished. Something's going to go wrong. I want it to be big and obvious, like big red light right in front of me so I can fix that and then I'll feel good and I'll move on. Otherwise, like I just wouldn't be able to sleep the rest of the night.
Yes.
I missed something. Definitely something was missed.
Yes.
Absolutely.
A neon sign, which is clear you appreciate neon signs because you got it going on there in your background.
That's fantastic.
broken. Cool. So are we going to start with Rocky 8 to 9 migration? Let's talk about that. Why would you do that? Why would somebody want to migrate from 8 to 9?
And caveat it. All the caveats and warnings from previous.
Well, why? I think it's a pretty easy answer. Eventually, things stop being supported, right? So you eventually have to move to a new version at some point or another. We already talked. I mean, didn't we do on one of these? We were talking about migrating from CentOS 7 to Rocky 9. I think we already talked about that once, right?
We did.
Yeah, it never hurts to I guess rehash that CentOS 7 is about to be completely EOL fairly soon. So if you haven't migrated off those systems, hopefully you've got a plan and you're implementing them. If you don't, we did a quick webinar. I've got a blog post and a video that kind of shows using the Elevate tool to do that. Although, it's funny that that's not necessarily our recommendation. And I can show you an 8 to 9 demo as well. Just going from Rocky 8 to Rocky 9, right? Because you also have to move between versions here. And it's using the exact same Elevate tool. I would show you the demo, but it's almost a 1-to-1 of the other one. I push the go button and it migrates your Rocky 8 to a 9 system using this tool, which is really cool. It kind of does the leap. It evaluates what's in there and it'll automatically try and fix any dependencies required in there. And then it'll go ahead and do the full migration. That's boring. But normally when we tell people like, hey, you need to migrate from like one version of an OS to another, we usually say it's best to build a new one. If I want to go from Rocky 8 to Rocky 9, it's best to build a Rocky 9 and then migrate my apps. I mean, that's your experience too, right, Zane?
Absolutely. That is our preferred way of doing it. It's the cleanest. I've used the Leap tool and it went great. And then 6 months later, there were some really weird things going on and I had to rebuild it anyway. So it's just cleaner to start from scratch. It just is. It's also a really good opportunity to automate things. So I know previous life, we didn't necessarily automate the installs of applications or how that was going to look or the testing. So if you have those legacy things, when you're going through an upgrade from a major version to major version, it's a great time to go back and do some sort of configuration management, software automation installs. It kind of future-proofs you when you have to do this again. So I know we have a lot of people moving from CentOS 7 straight to Rocky 8. And then they're looking at moving to 9. So if you automate it, you actually kind of make that a little more simple. But what Greg's going to show, it's really cool. If you try it, just remember, make sure you have backups. Make sure you've tested that your backups work. We have had some people try things in production and not necessarily having backups. So make sure you back it up. Make sure you test this in a lower environment. I think I've caveated as much as I can. Test.
Yeah, for sure. And that one is a super snooze fest to demo. So what I actually wanted to talk about was something I've been working on that hasn't seen the light of day necessarily yet because I'm not completely complete on it, but the real core components that are functional and need to be there are there. And it's how would I simulate the manual migration, right? Where I build a new system and I migrate my apps. I have kind of done that in a little demo scenario. I'm not saying this is exactly how you would do it in your environment, but it is a way you could do it. And so I have kind of a discover system here, right? And so what you do is you run the discover, and it's a simple playbook that you've got all of your migration hosts, and it's going to loop through each one of those hosts you want to migrate, and it's looking for all of the RPMs. I could have done this using gather facts in Ansible, which is a system where it will go and just pull a whole bunch of stuff variabilized. Although I found if you're running against CentOS 7, it doesn't return all that information. But the tried and true RPM command does absolutely work on everything you could be potentially running it. So it will go and it'll find all the apps you have installed, and then it's going to run another command and it's going to look for what's actually enabled, what's actually running. So maybe I have Apache installed, but it's disabled and it's not running, right? So it just happened to be something they put on there. I probably don't need to migrate that over, right? It's just some dead application that somebody put on this thing. So what it does is it loops through, finds all of the applications you have, and it attempts to back them up one. And all of this part works just fine. Let me hide that right there so I can see everything. And let me zoom in just a little bit. So it's going to go through, and I have to know what kind of applications I'm going to be backing up, right? So it could be Nginx, it could be Apache. And when you're backing those things up, it's going to be kind of different based on those things. Well, I've done it where I'm showing you how to do it in Apache. So you can take this, you can copy and paste it, make modifications for your various applications. But here I'm saying, hey, if you have Apache installed on the system and it's actually enabled, it's running, well, then call this task file, right? And so my task file is right here. It's Apache backup. So if you want to do one for Nginx, you'd probably name it Nginx backup, or if you're running, a MariaDB or whatever it happens to be, right? Your specific one for that. Well, in here, I know my config files are going to be here. So you know what? Create a zip file that's got all of my config files in there. Then create a zip file that's got all of my data directories in there of RWW. So basically back all that stuff off and stick it on a backup server. It's like nothing too crazy there. And then I have a restore playbook for Apache. So now the interstitial, the middle piece that I am still working on is I'm using VMware. I'm going to clone a template of a new system. It'll have it in there. Once it's up, it's going to do the restore over there. So I am about 95% done because I've done all these things in various fashions. But here's the restore. It copies them from the backup server and then pastes them in the correct directories. Make sure Apache is installed right here first, right? And then it's going to extract those archives. Then it's going to start the service and say, start on boot. So really, it's going to take old system, scan through what applications do you have. Oh, I've got these. Well, I've created a template for HTTPD, right? So Apache, pull all the configs, then push them over. Jimmy, I was talking to Jimmy, super smart guy. He was like, why don't you go straight to the server? And I was thinking, that actually does make efficiency sense, right? I stand up the new server and I just transfer it straight over there. That could be a really good use case. For me, I like stuff being in a backup location. So I have it. I can look at it. I can test with it. I can play with it before I actually push it over to my production system. But essentially, you could stand up the new and then, once you feel comfortable with it, it's up, it's operating. You can, in VMware, just turn off the old system and then, set a reminder. A month from now, go ahead and kill that old system. Maybe 6 months from now. I don't know how comfortable you are with that, Zane, but I would probably wait a little while before I completely kill my old systems. But the cool part about this is I just have to make these template files like this for the different applications I might be running, right? So maybe I'm running a mail server, or I could potentially be running NTP server or a DNS server, all these things. Whenever I'm hitting this host system that I'm going to migrate, I don't necessarily have to know in advance everything that's already going to be installed on there, right? That complement, because at runtime, it's going to look, it's going to evaluate what's already installed, what am I actually using, and then I've already written my template files to back up those specific things. So I was trying to think about how to make it as flexible as possible. And I think a lot of people, and I'm going to say you probably should know everything that's running on your server, but does that translate to reality of the system that's running for 4 years? Do I really?
No,
Probably.
no, it does not.
Right.
No.
So it's probably conducive to your mental health if you have something that's a little bit more flexible that will find, oh, for some reason you are running a boot P server on this thing, because it turns out you are bootstrapping some stuff over here, and I'm going to go ahead and back that up, and then I'm going to push it to the new version of whatever this server is, right? So it just to me, in my opinion, it like helps my brain feel more comfortable for it to go ahead and discover all these little things I've forgotten that I've done and help me migrate. I'm curious what your thoughts on, because I haven't actually even talked to anybody about sort of this build out and this demo. Like, what do you think about that?
I have lots of questions and ideas. Not ideas. I just have questions. To me, from what you're showing, it gives you a really good idea to understand what you do have on your machine. Because how many times have you installed a machine and you just let it run through the default installer and you don't pay attention to what's on there or what's running? I hope people don't do that in production, but I know people that do. It's a really bad idea. I think this is a great opportunity to identify that stuff that doesn't need to be running. Like, I hate the fact that Bluetooth used to be on by default on a server. That just drove me insane.
Or like printer services and things like that.
Yeah. Yes. So no, I think this is fantastic. And being able to see, making sure you're going to get what's there and bring it over, but being able to actually identify that would be cool.
Yeah. So this, I hope, will serve as kind of like a little template by which maybe people could grab this and sort of move beyond there. Now, keeping that in mind, if you did need more help, say you're under the gun, say, I don't know, you've got a whole bunch of systems on CentOS 7 and you need them migrated, before it reaches end of life. Or you know what? You have a bunch of RHEL servers and you want to migrate them over to Rocky 8 or Rocky 9. We can help you with that. I say this is kind of a template by which you could do these little things. That amazing engineer I talked about, Jimmy, has worked out some tools that he's utilized before that actually wraps a GUI around all this stuff and makes it clicky-click simple to do a lot of this stuff, gives you great dashboards and visualizations and all that stuff. And we as CIQ would be happy to help you migrate all of those systems in a very efficient, repeatable fashion. And I used to do some consulting work, and I always said the mark of a good consultant is they work themselves out of a job. And so we want to leave you with an Ascender server with all of the services installed that will allow you to continue to configuration as code all of your infrastructure, because essentially that's what it breaks it down to being. You have all of your configurations in a repository somewhere, right, as code. So I want to rebuild a server. It's as simple as clicking a button and it will rebuild all that infrastructure. And we're not just talking about one server. We're talking about 100 or 1,000 servers, right? You push those into test, development, have that move into prod. It's entirely up to you. So to me, it's a really good kickstart or help if you aren't like fully automated or you just need some quick assistance getting all this stuff stood up. I'm sure Zane would love to take your call about all that.
I would love to take your call. I'd also like to ask you another question. So on the stuff, not necessarily that you're showing here, that we're talking about that we can help you with going through a migration that would get left behind by CIQ as a part of this thing running continually in the future, that would actually give you the ability to not have to talk to your internal audit team or your compliance team anymore, if I'm not mistaken, right? Like they could actually go see this dashboard and they would never come and bug you again.
Well, I mean, that's a blessing and a curse.
Well, it's good for them because they don't have to come fight with you. It's good for you because you don't have to go do the mundane task of I have to go to every server and figure out what's installed. They get to go do it themselves and get whatever they need.
All right. But then
seems like a win-win to me.
You have a junior engineer that installs something while he's troubleshooting, and now you get to explain why that's there. So, I mean, it's a blessing and a curse. No, but it absolutely helps with anybody who's got compliance requirements. It's going to be a godsend for all that stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just curious, like once this is all set up and you have another major migration to do in the future, like can you quantify like how much time and energy that will save someone if they do this correctly now?
Yeah, it should be butt loads, I think is the technical term. No, it's going to save you a lot of time, but also theoretically, it provides you a path to build your infrastructure differently. Instead of one at a time, building up a server, installing all the things, now you've got everything truly automated. So it becomes click button deployment for this new infrastructure. So it can actually be, I'm not saying you have to, right? Nothing is a have to here, but it gives you the opportunity to shift the way you operate. Instead of manually doing all this stuff, now literally everything is here, as well as methods to do backups. So it'll pull all of your stuff to configuration as code if you want to. I was always a belt and suspenders kind of person. So I would maintain, here's the current state of configurations. And then, here's my backup systems that are actually backing up what is truly there on the thing. It's the difference when you build a house, it's got your initial plans and then you've got the as-built. Like this was what we had coming in. This is what we thought was going to happen. This is what we really ended up doing at the end of the day. So I was always definitely belt and suspenders. And so this allows you to kind of do that on an automated fashion, or you can schedule it in the system where it'll just automatically do these backups for you, right? These configurations code backups. Makes it really simple. But as to your point, Rose, yeah, Rocky 10 comes out and you want to start migrating hosts over that, you get to use this exact same set of automations to do those migrations if you want to. Not just deployments, right? Like after we do the migration, we'll use them for deployment, but then when the next set of migrations come around, those sorts of things are there and available as well.
Is there a limit to the number of applications that you can automate? Like, it seems to me like if you had 10,000, that would maybe make you crazy. Like, is there like people usually do like 10? Do they do all of them? Is it the more the merrier?
Even in really large organizations we've talked to, and Zane, you've done a lot more consulting than I have, so you're probably better equipped to to answer this question, but it usually boils down to you're talking to somebody that's got like 3,000 virtual and physical servers. They've probably got between 15 and 100 applications total running on all that stuff. So you might have, 200 web servers, but they're all pretty much ran in the exact same complement of applications in there. At least that's my experience. What have you seen out there, Zane?
No, absolutely. It is, as much as people want to call them snowflakes, and that goes back to everyone's built differently, they're typically doing the same thing. So there aren't a lot of variations in the actual base of the server. There just might be some different packages that actually run the app. So 90% of it on that 3,000 servers is probably exactly the same. So to Greg's point, there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot. So you can do massive amounts of servers because typically in the bigger environments, there are a lot of, it's scale. They need more servers to scale than they have more applications. Now, some people have a lot of applications, not saying they don't.
For sure. Well, while we're talking about migrations, I guess it was in November, late November, I completed another set of playbooks for migration. Like I've had migration on the brain for a minute now. This one actually took me about a month to kind of put all the pieces together. But it's the ability to migrate between various AWX derivatives, right? So AWX, which is the upstream that Ascender's built from, right? Kind of our automation platform here. That includes Ascender, right? So you have AWX, Ascender. Another downstream is Red Hat's AAP, Ansible Automation Platform. And I've written some playbooks using some community sourced collections of various things to be able to migrate everything between those systems, which I think is really fun. So I thought I would do a quick live demo of, I've got an Ascender server here. You can see my number of hosts are zeros, inventories are low, right? If I look at my job templates, I just have the 6 that come baked in by default. And what is this right here? But it is an AAP install in my lab environment. How fun is that? So I can take my playbooks that I've created, migration, well, without the slash. And these two right here, I've got one that exports data and one that imports data. So if well, actually, I'm going to go ahead and run this import data. So what it's going to do is it's going to take all the data from this Red Hat AAP server, and it's going to stick it into that Ascender server. I'm going to go ahead and run it now because the import process takes about 7.5, 8 minutes, and mine aren't like super loaded up, right? The more data it has to transfer, the longer it's going to take. But I wanted to show you how simple this process really is. I have a couple of playbooks you interact with here. I've got an export one. Click on the export one. And really all you do in here is you designate, what do I want to export? And so all of these things are available for us to export. Now, as Zane said, there are always caveats with everything in existence. So we don't get to export absolutely everything. So like system settings, like your logging settings, those don't get exported. Roles aren't exported natively. Now, all that's available in the API. All this stuff is available in the API. It's just in the tools that exist now, the community supplied tools, those capabilities aren't there. But this is version 1.0. And who's to say 1.1 isn't going to start adding some of those things in there? So I'm definitely curious what the community would like to see, especially if you want to contribute code. I actually had a couple of people already contribute to the repository, which I think is really cool. So people are excited and interested about this stuff. But essentially what you do is in the export playbook here, I just designate what things do I want to actually export out. And it's going to connect into the system, and it's going to pull all of those out and save them as standard YAML files. If you look at the playbook, that's it. It's really super duper short. So it just kind of loops through all these things you're looking to export, pulls them out as files. Once you have that, let me go back just a tick. I put all of my configs in my config folder here, and I'll show you, I don't know. What do you want to see? My job templates. It's just standard YAML, boring formatted files. So here's all of my job templates that it spits out in there. Next, I run the import playbook right here. It's the same kind of deal. Anything that I want to import, I just have right here. Anything I don't want to import, I comment out. And so this is where a lot of the interesting parts came in for me and a lot of the time consuming. So a lot of the information that's exported to re-import back in with the tools, you have to format it in very specific ways. You have to pull certain information out. And so good for you. I've gone through all the trouble of figuring all those things out. I also noticed whenever you say import your inventories, and so inventories, big giant list of all the hosts I could potentially operate against. By default, it doesn't pull any of the hosts or groups in because they kind of assume you're going to be dynamically pulling that, right? So if you are, say, using a configuration management database like ServiceNow, or you're pulling straight from AWS or your VMware environment, you're pulling all those hosts in dynamically, no problem, right? It doesn't matter because all that stuff gets populated automatically. But for me, I've got a ton of stuff that's static or in my lab environment. So I actually wanted to import all those. So I wrote a portion that consumes those files, figures it all out, and allows you to import it. So if you have these set to true on importing of inventories, it'll also bring all those hosts in too. So you can get all that stuff in there. After that, it's really just some nice to have. So you can filter out what users you don't want to bring in. You definitely don't want it to bring in admin if you're using that to import, because guess what? It overrides the password and then everything fails after that. But then it's just some cleanup stuff. If you look at this, this is all of me just editing data and fixing it.
I was going to say, this sounds very Jinja-tooey.
So it will go in. This is still, yeah, okay. Now it finally gets to the part where it's actually pushing things in. I use a block and rescue system in here. I've noticed if you're importing a whole big giant chunk of data, sometimes because my servers in my VMware environment, it's a shared environment, so I keep my resources really low. Sometimes the API will time out. And so this gives it a chance to, if it times out, it'll just retry really quick. And then Bob's your uncle, everything generally completes fairly clean. So after that, you don't have to touch anything and it should pull everything in. See, I tried to talk kind of slow. Let's see if we made it. 7.5 minutes. How far are we in? We're only at 4.5. So it's only got about half of that stuff imported in here. But let's do a quick refresh just to see what it's gotten through. So it's already pulled in a bunch of the hosts. So I've pulled in my inventories. I've got my projects in here, right? All this stuff was sitting at 0. I'm not sure if it's hit the template section yet. Yep, it's starting to pull in templates now. We started at 6. It's at 14. It should end at about 36. So as you can see, it allows you to take any system you're using out there, right? Pull all that data out. You can just keep it as a backup if you wanted to, say, for example. But you can also use it to easily push over to other systems. So something I'm seeing, or it's not seeing, I'm envisioning for kind of my next demo using this, is you have a main server in your data center. And so this is kind of a weakness of the AWX infrastructure. It's not really good at migrating information kind of all over the globe sort of thing. So I've got my main server here. I live in Texas, so it'll be in my Dallas data center. And that's where I make most of my changes. I put all of my infrastructure in there. Well, what I can have it do on a schedule or on a reaction is I can have it export all this stuff into a Git repository. And then I can have it push that out to my Sydney, Australia data center. And so it will push all of my new configurations in there. And it'll push to my London-based one and then my one over in Germany, right? So you can actually use it to push to different environments. Now, it could be a push to, dev environment or production environment. So it doesn't actually have to be like geographic separate. It doesn't have to be that big and cool.
You beat me to it.
Yeah, it can't be something small and simple as well, right? Like if you're just moving it from one testing environment to another or what have you. But it gives you the ability to kind of migrate your infrastructure whole hog. So if you are using a system and you would love to move over to Ascender so you can get our CIQ support and work with people with amazing mustaches and or beards, you've got a great mustache too, Rose, then it gives you the ability to really succinctly do that. So I'm curious if you guys have any questions on that.
Yeah, you kind of answered my question, but the question I had was, in the past when I've seen AWX derivatives installed, typically the way to do it, or most people do it, is they have one install for everything: dev, QA, staging, production, all of them. But I've always been asked, I want to have one for each. I don't want them all to share. I don't want my production stuff talking to dev, test. But it's always been really difficult, most of the time, to actually move something through a process of going from dev to staging, QA, production. This helps me there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And again, these playbooks are a jumping off point. Right now, it's set to pull everything. Again, you can like pick and choose in between there. And even then you can modify it so that you can squeeze down like job templates. You could say, just pull in the job templates that have this in the name or are associated with this inventory or whatever. You could get more granular in there if you want. So you could be very specific if you want. Pick and choose whatever pieces you like.
That's very cool, because that was always the complaint that I heard was from a development standpoint. People would build a complicated workflow and they would test it out on their laptop and then they would try to deploy it somewhere else and they like have to go recreate it every time. It's painful. So that's fantastic. Very cool.
It's a big pain. It's a big pain. I know like upgrading between versions of Ascender is super easy now. But if you did want to, and I'm not saying you would ever do this, you have an install and then, you don't think about upgrading it for a few years. This might be a nice, safe way of testing, upgrading to a completely new system. None of us would ever do that. Obviously, we would never do that. But if you were in that kind of a pickle, it's a really nice, safe way because all you're doing is just pulling data out, right? You're extracting it. After that, you can do whatever you want with it.
It's fantastic. It's really cool to see.
Yeah. What else do we have going? This is something something multiple customers have queried me about is how do we create a local Rocky repository, right? So instead of having to update all my machines all the time, like how can I actually have kind of a local repo inside? And I think it's the Rocky Foundation actually put out a nice little article about how here's the steps you can follow, although they assume you already have a bunch of stuff in there. Like they assume you already have a web server installed and various other pieces. And I thought, what would it be like if I have just a plain system, not doing anything, follow those steps. And so I created one right here and it's create a local repository. So I thought there are probably a couple of reasons. So also at the end of this, I can either synchronize all that stuff immediately or run on a cron job. I'm going to tell it to go now. I'm going to launch it. So this is actually reaching out to just a clean Rocky 9 system, and it's going to do the install on it. So a couple of reasons are the one that was a big one for me is bandwidth constraints. Say I've only got 500 megs or a gig connection coming in, and I've got, 2,000 servers inside, and I need to do updates. All 10,000 of those things are going to be hammering my internet connection, trying to pull that data in, right? So if I have a local repository, I'll just pull straight out of the network, right? No big deal. Only that local repository has to synchronize to the internet. So it's definitely going to save me bandwidth resources there. I've also talked to people before where their data centers are like connected through some weird, I think Zane, you guys had somebody that was going over like a T1 or something like that. So
Yes.
It is very much a non-starter if you're trying to push through like 1.54 megabits per second connection. At best, I guess you could have that local repository that would synchronize overnight and then everybody could just pull from that. But also security concerns. That's another big one. A lot of people don't let their machines have like direct internet access, right? It makes a lot of sense. Whether you're pulling in maybe bad packages or data exfiltration, whatever it happens to be, they just don't want those things talking to the internet. So you really have to have a local repository anyway to satisfy those security requirements or compliance requirements, whatever it happens to be. A local repository can actually be super useful. So this just connects into the local Rocky server. I'm sorry. So you could have a bare install. It will connect to this server. If you don't have a web server, guess what? It goes ahead and installs it, configures it. It actually connects to your firewall on there. You can see it setting up the HTTP, HTTPS ports. It's configuring SE Linux as well, which all of us know SE Linux is your friend, which is why it says it failed because I have that turned off. But it would have done it had I had SE Linux actually running on this system. So do as I say, not as I do. Then it installs rsync on the system. It basically puts absolutely everything you need in there. And then it tells it, hey, go ahead and run. And now that it's completed, it says, go ahead and synchronize now. Don't wait for the cron job to hit. Let me go back over to that web server, do a quick reload. We're doing it live. There you are. Now you can see let me zoom in a little bit. It's not that cool, but you can see all of my repositories starting to synchronize. All of the various files are in here and available for my local systems to start grabbing. So this is good if you have one server, you want to have a cluster of servers. Guess what? You just point it towards your cluster of servers and it configures all this stuff for you. You don't have to do anything else. Literally, I made 0 modifications to the playbook. I just pushed go and it installs everything for you.
It's fantastic. And
Better
if you're a
living through
CIQ customer, you want something like this, we have Mountain. We can actually deliver you repositories, custom repositories, secured repositories, long-term supported repositories, all of our other products. So
yeah. And the cool thing about Mountain too is it gives you access to custom kernels if you want us to do any of that stuff. If you want long-term support, say like 8.6, 8.8, any of that stuff, all that's going to be available through Mountain, right?
very cool. It's great, Greg. Thank you.
Dang.
So Greg, you mentioned some customers reaching out to you and adding to the Ascender. Where did they do that?
They did it right through GitHub. So all my stuff is in public Git repositories in GitHub. So anybody can do pull requests on that. So they can make modifications, submit them to me. And I'm not the fastest person about reviewing all those changes, but I do get to them, pretty much all of them. And happy to have that stuff integrated. I think in the migration one, somebody added, in the CentOS 7 migration one, somebody added like pre-steps and post steps in there. So they did a really good job of, hey, you know, if you've got some pre-files, I'll go check to see if they're there. If they are, I'll go ahead and implement them for that server. So they did some really cool stuff in there.
Very nice. Thank you to those out there that are helping contribute and give back. That's fantastic.
Yeah. It's good to have friends, which shows me there's a need for it. People are actually using it. And
Absolutely.
the 8 to 9 stuff's good. And I'm curious to see if anybody for kind of the manual method, what people will do. I'm sure somebody has a way better, more efficient idea of doing that. And I would be curious to hear it. This is just what my brain could comprehend. I was a network guy, right? So it's like, you know, my intelligence only goes so far.
I'd love to see it too. I think we have a lot of people going through this right now. And if they're not going through it, they're thinking about having to go through it. I think there's a lot of people getting very anxious because the clock is ticking and they're running out of time really fast.
Yeah. Well, not just the 8 to 9, but the 7 to something.
7 to something. That's the one I was referring to. Thank you, Rose.
7 to something. Yes. Yeah. So officially you have 178 days, 11 hours, 21 minutes, and 25, 24, 23, 24 seconds.
Not much time.
No, we have a countdown going on the website. So I was just looking at that. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're looking for help on that, please reach out and let us know. We'd love to help. Again, we're getting this a lot. We are here to make sure we can make this as easy as possible. Obviously, the complexity of your environment is going to make it more complex and more painful, but got to do it. You don't have much time.
Yes. And just do it the right way the first time, because then otherwise you're going to have to call us anyway. And we are also happy to help all of those people who reach out and say, oopsie.
True.
And the more people we help migrate, the faster we get, because we just build up our, you know, our dictionary of these applications have all these things. So we just get faster and more efficient every time we do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, great work, Greg and Jimmy and Michael and Justin and everybody else in the world who has been adding to all of the playbooks and everything to make Ascender what it is today. So it is perfect timing. I mean, really, this is like some really amazing timing because it is needed right now. Again, 178 days, 11 hours, 20 minutes, and now 5 seconds. Let's go. So you guys can feel free to reach out to any of us. It's easy to get a hold of us at ciq.com. Make sure that you like and share and subscribe. This is valuable information. So again, thank you, Greg, for coming on and showing us in real time. That's always fun to do things live. So again, thanks for being here. Happy New Year. We will definitely see you next week. Thank you. Bye.
Live next week in person, live, you and me.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Greg will be there too.
Meet
Meet everybody together.
Coming live from Reno. That's really
right.
fun. Yeah.
Very
awesome.
cool.
Oh, we doing a webinar next week?
Of
Oh, yeah.
course.
Oh, rock and roll, man. Just have the
On
whole
actual studio,
have the whole
we'll be
gang
there.
there.
That's right.
We will.
They'll have live hecklers. It'll be cool.
That'd be awesome. Looking forward to it.
Oh, amazing. All right. Thanks, guys. Like and subscribe and share, and we'll see you next week. Cheers.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everybody.